After my elimination at the regional playoffs, I picked up my Gabe deck, unsleeved all the cards, and arranged them nicely, ready to be packed back into my deck box. It is time to retire my Gabe deck, but boy has it been a run, pun intended. That my Gabe deck has been really fantastic, serving me very well over the past few months. It has been a shining star and has done so well in the tournaments, and is the main reason I am able to get 2 playmats out of my 2 tournaments. Of the 13 matches I played as runner in the 2 tournaments, I won a grand total of 11 of them, losing only twice, once because I was completely unprepared for the Scorched Earth Cerebral Imaging variant, and the other game was lost to the player who eventually became the regional champion for our regional tournament. It's by no means a large sample size, but I think it's still a pretty good run. With this video, I intend to go through some of the details with regards to playing my Gabe deck and shed some insight as is the reason why it is such a strong deck archetype in general. To me, I think it boils down to 2 reasons. Number 1, with Gabe, I'm able to create lose-lose dilemmas for the corp ever so often, and this always works in my favor. The second reason is because I think criminals are the best position of the 3 factions at leveraging on the power of lack of information, by leveraging on the power of the cards that they hold in their grip, which the corp does not know about. I've brought these points up time and again in some of my Gabe videos, and I'll be doing so here again. As I've always said, my Gabe deck, I think, is well suited to fight against NBN. In most of my examples here, I'll be using NBN as the corp, but really, you can tailor this to suit your needs when playing against various corps. So, let's begin proper. The first lose-lose dilemma that you create occurs on the very first click that you play. Against Gabe, what most corps do will be to ice up HQ, obviously. And as Gabe, what I really love to do is to run first click into HQ, which instantly creates a dilemma for the corp. Do I res the ice in front of HQ? With NBN, what's the worst it could be? An expensive toll booth, a flare, or some tagging device such as Data Raven? No big deal. If you res it, I gain more information on what the piece of ice is, and I will know how to deal with it. Usually though, it's an end-around ice, a cheap end-around such as Wraparound or Quandary, and in those cases, I would know what to special order out so that I can get into HQ when I need to the next time. If you don't rest the ice, obviously, you're just giving me a huge advantage because I'll get my 2 free credits and a card access, which may or may not be an agenda. So now, most corps have learned what to do against Gabe, to double ice up HQ by placing an unrest piece of ice guarding a rest piece of ice. Now, it's very hard for Gabe to get into HQ, right? Well, sure, maybe you're right, but you're spending so much effort to protect HQ that chances are your R&D and archives are most likely vulnerable, which leaves you open to the likes of my indexing and sneak door beta. That is something that many cannot afford to defend against in the early rounds of gameplay, and it's something that Gabe can exploit so well. And this leads into my next point. There are so many cards that you have to defend against when playing against Gabe. The likes of indexing, emergency shutdown, inside job, account siphon, and sneak door beta. How are you going to defend against all of them at the same time? You can't. You simply can't. What would be best is if you knew what was in my hand, if you knew what I could do to you. If you know I don't have an indexing in hand, you'll probably be okay with letting me through R&D for free. But alas, as the corp, you do not know what's in my hand, and that is where Gabe truly shines. Unless the corp is running Invasion of Piracy or Snoop, they will have no idea on what to expect from Gabe, because Gabe can do everything and anything. The best form of defense for corps would then be to give a bit of protection to every single server, spread the defenses thinly, and this works very, very well for Gabe because I have all the information. I know where is the ice, I know what ice it is, and I know the cards in my hand, and I know which server is the most vulnerable. So I can pinpoint the weaker server and make the most out of it. In the game of Netrunner, the corp is usually the one that holds the hidden information with unrest ice and unrest remotes. But with my Gabe deck, I flip the tables around. Now I'm the one that controls the pace of the game. I have the cards, I have the information, and you must try to handle playing against someone who might have all the tools, but you don't know for sure. Moving on to another scenario where the mid game rolls along and the corp finds themselves at a good position. They have iced up all their centrals, doubly iced up to boot, with end runs at the base and unrest ice on the top to secure the servers. This looks like a very good position, right? Well, not really. If you don't have any fast advanced mechanisms, you cannot score any agendas because I still have inside job to deal with your remotes. Yep, you're still not accomplishing your goal. You're not getting to the 7 agenda points you need to win the game. So this is why Gabe is so powerful. Your agendas are most likely clogged up in HQ, ready for my picking once I find a way in. Roughly around this time, in the early to mid stages of the game, my rig would look something like this. Look ma, no icebreakers. Yep, that's right. I have 3 sneak dot betas and 3 data suckers in my deck. And I can afford to lose them all because I can always get more by drawing more cards. And these provide me all the tools I need for face checking ice very early on. If the corp lets me through, which they often do because either they are poor or they want to keep their unrest ice a secret, I'll get data sucker tokens, which will hugely benefit me when the mid to late game rolls around. And sneak dot beta obviously gives me another way into the vulnerable areas of the corp. So once the corp has their central server sealed up already, my rig I'll start building up and it will look something like this. Ideally, by now I would have a couple of data tokens up, which will allow me to deal with most of the ice that the corp can throw at me. Of course, you might be noticing that there is something missing from my rig, which is a killer. Yep, that's where Fairy and Fam come in. Typically, I don't really like to use a fixed killer breaker like the likes of Mimic or Ninja because they're just too uneconomical. Gabe doesn't have time to build up his economy. He needs to run fast and run hard. And the thing with Gabe is, why do you need to break sentries? If you have a Caduceus on HQ, what can I do? I can just run elsewhere. That's the power of Gabe again. Because you're not holed into running a single server, as with most shapers which try to R&D lock. In that case, they need to have all the tools available to get through any ice that the corp can throw at them. But for Gabe, if one road is sealed, there's always another back alley available to attack from. And being able to pressure so many servers at once is always the reason I champion Gabe as a very powerful runner. Because Gabe has all the options and the corp has none. Or rather, the corp has options too, but they're all very bad. The reason why I still have fairies in my deck is because they protect against the likes of power shutdown and program thrashing. It's very important to defend against that. And Fan Fatale is always useful to defend against the likes of Tollbooth or Jinteki in general with low strength sentries. So, some of you might be wondering, why do you run both Data Sucker and Knight? Aren't they anti-synergistic? Well, of course, I have never had the need to use a Data Sucker token to deal with the likes of Janus or Advanced Hadrian's Wall. Those situations rarely ever pop up. But what Data Sucker allows me to do is to pump up my York, which is a fixed breaker, and more importantly, it serves as a second or even third Desperado. Each virus token on Data Sucker is one less need to pump up my Corroder, is one less need to pump up a Fairy or a Femme Fatale. And those credits that I save add up over time. And what better way is there to achieve word compression than to get virus tokens for running? For a Gabe deck that runs very often, Data Sucker is the perfect complement. It's the same concept as Andromeda. So, and Knight helps me in this quest. Knight allows me to get into servers I otherwise wouldn't be able to get into, especially early on. It's a very disposable breaker that deals with almost any type of ice. And those 1 or 2 Data Sucker tokens that I get early on might be just what I need to deal against the corp. The likes of a Victor 2.0 or an RSVP or an Inazuma might stop me cold, but once I get a Knight out, get a couple of runs in, and bring out my York, things change completely. Now I can get through servers for free because York is just that good. I've had this game in regionals where someone raised an RSVP saying that he needed to text me, and I was wondering, are you serious? All I need to spend is 1 Data Sucker token and I get it back because I'm running through the central server. I don't even have to pay a single credit. What tax? So yes, that is the power of Anarch fixed breakers in crypto. Now back to our mid-game scenario against NBN. Let's say they have an Unrest Sansan in a remote, and I know about it. They have their centrals all nicely iced up. And they have 8 credits ready to score an Astro Script the next turn. What options do I have? Well, for starters, if I have a Knight in my hand, which is quite likely, what I can do is to bring out the Knight and hop it onto, say, the end of run ice on HQ and force a run on HQ. Now, this forces the corp into another lose-lose dilemma. Do I rest the ice in front of it? If they don't rest the ice, I can get through essentially for free. I earn back the 2 credits I spent breaking the wraparound, and I get to access a card. In regionals, there was this situation that cropped up, and what the court did was to rest the ice in front of it, which happened to be a Grim that trashed my knight. I didn't really care. My knights are expendable. And anyway, I had another knight in hand, so I just had to play out after I was done running, and I still managed to maintain the pressure. But more importantly, I forced the corp to rest the ice. Not only do I gain 1 bad pub, but I also bring him down to 3 credits, which means he cannot push out his Astral Train the next turn. That is so huge. Most other runners are forced to run and trash the Sand, and some runners don't have the economy to repeatedly do that. But for Gabe, he always has the option to say, no, I don't want to trash the Sand. I'll just deny your credits. I'll force runs on your central servers, or even throw a blind account siphon at you, forcing you to use your money on anything except pumping out an Astral Train. This is why I think it does so well against NBN, because NBN always needs the 8 credits to start off an Astral Train with Sunset. Another thing I can do is to get into HQ by hook or by crook, either through an inside job or a knight following a sneak door. After that, what I can do is to emergency shutdown. I could use that on a server that I plan to assault next turn. In this diagram, I'm shown emergency shutting down an Eli. Most people wouldn't emergency shut down a 3 res cost ice, but this actually presents a very horrible dilemma for the corp, because if they push out an Astral Train next turn, I didn't deny any credits. The corp still has 8 credits, they can push out an Astral Train, but they'll be left with no credits the next turn, and I can have free reign over R&D, which means indexing. Yep. Or I could do that to HQ and legwork in, although I don't have legwork in this Gabe deck, but you get a point. It is very easy to exploit vulnerabilities in corp when they are low on credits, and Gabe does a horrendously good job of denying credits. When you talk about credit denial, most people think of account siphon and vamp, but really there are so many ways which you can do so. The best way which every runner has access to is running on servers. You run, you force the corp to rest ice, they are poor. Mission accomplished. So yes, that is how I play my Gabe Knight in general. Very aggressive, and this leads to a lot of lose-lose situations created where the corp is forced to spend money just to keep me out, just to prevent me from getting to match point. And if they play passively, if they don't rest the ice, I still gain an advantage. So to sum up, having an entire toolbox of solutions in your hand that the corp does not know about, and the ability to create so many options for yourself while creating terrible options for the corp all around is the reason why my Gabe deck is so strong. And I hope that as I look towards the future, as more data packs are released, I hope to find a similarly powerful deck and pilot them to victory at future tournaments. And I'll be making use of these pointers, gameplay pointers from what I've learned from my Gabe deck, and hopefully I can incorporate them into my future decks. But I think the most important thing is that I actually have fun while I'm playing Gabe. It's not like Kate Atman, which I've always identified as a very strong archetype, but I've never got down to playing it just because I feel it's so boring. You just look at what ice the corp has and you get the appropriate strength Atman to deal with it, run through, get your agendas and win. It's so boring. With Gabe, it's very different because every game is different depending on the cards that you draw. And your ability to use these cards in a manner that can put you in the best position to score the most agendas is what makes Netrunner so interesting for me. And it's the reason why I haven't really burned out from playing so much Netrunner over the past few weeks. So, to all of you viewers out there, hopefully you have some success with your tournament decks as well. And always remember to enjoy your games of Netrunner, because that's what playing Netrunner is all about, having fun. Thanks for watching, and hope you've learned something as well. See you around.